Today, we're diving into the new battlegrounds of retail. We're talking about the fight for the future of how we all shop. And believe me, it is happening in some very, very unexpected places, from the digital world right to the physical store. You know that famous line, right? It perfectly captures that simple joy of a pleasant surprise. And that thrill, that feeling of the unknown, is now at the very heart of a multi-billion-dollar trend in retail. But you gotta ask, what happens when that surprise is carefully engineered for profit? Well, it stops being just a simple box of chocolates and becomes something much, much more complicated and, honestly, pretty controversial. So what are we talking about here? It's called a blind box. Now, this whole thing started with collectible toys, but the concept has absolutely exploded. We're seeing it in cosmetics, clothing, even food. It's a business model built entirely on that allure of surprise. This brings us to our first case study. We're going to look at how regulators all over the world are trying to get a handle on this. I mean, are these products just a bit of harmless fun? Or are they a form of unregulated gambling that's preying on our love of a good surprise? You see, as blind boxes and their digital cousins, loot boxes, became these massive multi-billion-dollar industries, governments were kinda slow to react. So now they're scrambling to draw a line in the sand. And as you're about to see, the answers they're coming up with are all over the map. Just take a look at this global patchwork of rules. The differences are fascinating. Over in Asia, you've got these really strict, proactive regulations. China has age limits and forces companies to tell you the odds. South Korea is heading them where it hurts, with fines based on total revenue. But then you hop over to the West, and wow, it's a completely different story. The EU has no single law. The UK is basically letting the industry police itself, and the US is taking a case by case. It really highlights these different cultural viewpoints, right? Asia's proactive stance versus the West's more hands-off, buyer beware tradition. And if you want a perfect example of the chaos in Europe, look no further than this. You have two courts, one in the Netherlands and one in Austria, looking at the exact same type of product in the game FIFA. The Dutch court said, nope, not gambling, it's part of a bigger game of skill. But the Austrian court focused on the fact that you can sell the prizes you win for real money, and they ruled it is illegal gambling. Two totally opposite conclusions. It's wild. So while Europe is kind of stuck in this legal debate, the US Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is taking a much more direct approach. Instead of waiting around for new laws, it's just using its existing power to protect consumers. And trust me, they mean business. Let that number sink in. $20 million. That is the massive fine the developer of the hugely popular game Genshin Impact had to pay to settle charges from the FTC. This wasn't some little warning shot. This was a direct hit. And you know what? That huge fine was just the beginning. The FTC forced some major changes. No more selling these things to teens without their parents' okay. They have to tell you the odds, straight up. And they have to stop using those confusing virtual currencies that hide the real cost. This really shows you the power of direct enforcement. Okay, so let's shift gears. We're going to move from the digital world right into the physical store aisle, because it turns out the rules are being rewritten there too. A whole different kind of battle is being fought over crime, safety, and who's really responsible for protecting our stores. This right here is the central question. Major retail groups are saying, yes, absolutely, we are under siege from organized crime, and it's putting everyone in danger. But is that the whole story? And their big solution is this piece of legislation, CORCA. They've been lobbying Congress really hard for it. The idea is to give federal law enforcement more muscle and more resources to go after these large-scale theft rings that often operate across state lines, which makes them super hard for local police to handle. This quote really sums up the industry's public argument perfectly. You see how they're framing it? This isn't just about losing some merchandise. They're saying it's a critical issue of safety for their workers, their customers, and even the national supply chain. But, and this is a big but, as our source material reveals, the story isn't quite that simple. When you actually start digging into the data, a much more complex and sometimes contradictory picture starts to emerge. Let's just walk through the counterpoints on this slide. On the left, you've got the industry's claim that safety concerns are driving high turnover. But on the right, workers' surveys show that low pay is the real #1 reason people leave. They warn about escalating violence, but the data shows assaults and shoplifting are actually down.
And that key statistic about organized crime's financial impact, well, it was a major overestimation that the industry's own federation had to retract.
So, okay, we've got these two seemingly unrelated stories, right? Regulating digital surprise boxes and tackling theft in physical stores. But if you look closer, they are both about the exact same thing, defining the new roles for retail in the 21st century. It really all boils down to these three fundamental tensions. First up, you've got protection versus innovation. How do you regulate something like blind boxes without killing a new and popular business model? Then there's experience versus exploitation. When does the thrill of a surprise cross the line into something that's actually exploiting customers or employees? And finally, freedom versus regulation. Who gets to set the rules here? Should the industry be allowed to regulate itself, or does the government need to step in with some hard and fast rules? Both of these battles show that whether it's the hidden odds in a digital box or the hidden costs of crime and safety in a physical store, the new frontiers of retail are forcing us all to ask a very, very important question. When the full cost of something isn't clear up front, who is it that ultimately ends up paying?